All right, I'm going to try to tackle government and free money in the most layman terms as possible, which is really hard to do because it's kind of magic. So first I want to say that the video that the original commenter commented on is completely inaccurate on almost everything. You can go watch it for context for this video, but do not repeat anything that creator says is fact, because it's not. Basically, the video claims that the US went bankrupt and therefore switched to a fiat currency and owes all the American people a whole bunch of money. The government already owes everything, has already bought and paid for everything, so you don't actually need to work. You just need to have a good credit score and go to the bank, and they'll just give you money. First off, the United States has never gone bankrupt. Bankruptcy is a financial failure of an institution or an entity, and even through the Great Depression, the United States has never financially failed. Second, having a good credit score doesn't magically make a bank give you money. It helps you get a loan, which you have to pay back with interest, but you need more than a good credit score to get a loan. Now, like me, for an example, I've got like an 800 credit score, but most banks won't lend shit to me because I work for myself and I don't show much of an income. So if I can't demonstrate that I have the debt to income ratio to reliably pay back that loan, they're not going to give me that loan regardless of how good my credit score is. Perhaps the creator was referring to credit cards, and yeah, they're a lot more lenient with those for a few reasons. So with my credit score, I've never been turned down for a credit card application, but that's because I pay my credit card bills. If I stopped paying my credit card bills, I would no longer have a good credit score and they'd stop giving me credit cards. So unless you're committing credit card fraud, it's not as simple as just you don't have to work, you'll just keep giving you credit cards. That's not going to happen. So now fiat currency and the Federal Reserve and free make-believe money. First off, the Federal Reserve is not the government. It is a private bank. So the previous creator seemed a little confused on that, but it is a private entity and it is the bank of banks and the bank of the federal government. So now banks get their money from the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve tells the US government how much paper money to print. And that money is what's called a fiat currency. Fiat currency is simply a currency that the government says has value because they say it has value, and we the people believe them. Literally, us communally believing that money has a certain value is why it has that certain value. Which is really honestly the case with any currency. I mean, gold has no inherent value either, except for the fact that we all believe that gold is valuable. The only difference is that a real currency, like gold or silver, has a physical limitation. Like, you can't just make more of it. Where a fiat currency is just paper money where people can make more, or in the 21st century, just add numbers onto a computer. This could easily lead us down another rabbit hole about the value of money and the supply of money and inflation and all of those things that will get me way off topic, so not today, Satan. But I will say how everybody's always worried about the debt and the government filing bankruptcy, that can't happen with a fiat currency. And that's because the government can hypothetically just make more money to pay off its debt. Now, that would have a bunch of serious repercussions that I'm not going to get into, but that is the reason that the government can't go bankrupt, and the debt is not as big of a deal as some people make it. Now to the free money part, where the government, which is not really the government, it's the Federal Reserve, gives out free money, because they do this. But it's not given to you and me. It's kind of given to banks, sort of. And I have not found a real great way to explain this in layman's terms, as it's barely something that I can wrap my head around, so buckle up. I'm going to do my best. The Federal Reserve decides every year how much new money they want in circulation. They do this in a few ways, one by setting interest rates and another by telling banks how much money they have to loan. Now, banks, knowing how much the Federal Reserve will lend them to lend out, the bank gives you a mortgage to buy a house. When you get that mortgage, that's brand new money that never existed before. Because the bank just gave you money that they didn't have. The Federal Reserve told them that they could lend out, but it wasn't their money to give. Because it didn't exist, except for the fact that the Federal Reserve told them that it could exist if they lent the money out. So now you get the house, the seller gets the money, so now that money's in circulation. And now the bank carries that debt, but they owe that money back to the Federal Reserve. And they pay back the Federal Reserve for this money that never actually existed, but they owe now by you paying back the loan. Since the sale made with the purchase of that money that didn't previously exist has added value to the GDP, that money exists now because we calculate the value of our money by our GDP. But it also exists in limbo until the bank pays it back, so it sort of exists, but not completely exists. And if the banks irresponsibly loan all that money like they did before the housing crash, and people don't pay that money back to the bank, and the banks can't pay the money they owe to the Federal Reserve, then that money disappears and the banks fail and that value is lost from the GDP. And that's the ultimate concept I think he was poorly attempting to explain. If I've only made you more confused here, you're welcome. I make myself more confused literally every time I try to explain this concept, because it's just this side of legitimate, if this side of legitimate at all. A big shout out to Cannon's Fodder. She's an economics teacher and a great creator on here, and she helped me put my head together to even attempt to make this video. If you don't already, go follow her. She makes great content, and if you're lucky, maybe she will even do a better job of trying to explain this than I did, which wouldn't be hard. But if nothing else, I hope this does clear up some of the misinformation from that previous video. All right, I'm cold and my brain hurts now, so I'm going back inside.